Talk on another PolitiPod Live. Tonight we'll cover Pope News, This Week in Failure, Oh Shoot, White House Edition, and Iced Out. We'll also have our segments Election Central and International News. I'm Tom Bickle.
I'm Hannah Soldner.
And I'm Matt Nisanoff. We'll start with Pope News. And there's recently been a release of an encyclical, which is, I just learned myself, is a paper that is the official position of the Catholic Church and its 1.4 billion followers. And in this first encyclical that this Pope has released, it's called the Magnifica Humanitas, and it's reversing a number of 15th century papal documents that had called on Catholics to invade, conquer, fight, and subjugate non-Christians for perpetual slavery. And this Pope is saying, no, actually, we're against slavery, and we're not going to pursue that sort of policy anymore. We're going to see what we can do about not supporting slavery, which, hey, that's a good turn. He also mentions this in relation to AI and how AI is something that needs to be, there's a culture of power is what it's called directly in the document for achieving AI. And he's especially developing positions and methods, or he feels that the AI is being specifically set up to increase remote warfare, which he's against. So, sounds like a good document to me. You guys, what do you think? Guys and gals?
Folks of
Yeah,
all ages. I feel like anytime you want to call off the call to subjugate, invade, conquer, and fight non Christians for perpetual slavery, I feel like any day's a good day to do that. Yeah, good for him. Better late than
yeah,
never.
yeah. It was not great that it was a law. I think it, if I recall my history correctly, it was created 1 year after Columbus landed in the Americas. So they were basically just like, oh, new people, and they're probably not Christians, so we should enslave them. And we don't have to talk about the several hundred-year ramifications of that. Um, so yeah, it's always good to go back and change that. I think it's also good to acknowledge that the slave trade directly came from that. Here in America as well as elsewhere. Um, and I think it's good to have this commentary about AI and war. One of the I don't remember if I think it was um, OpenAI or somebody who was originally signed a deal with the Department of Justice to let them do like whatever they wanted with their AI, and then they were like, wait, we don't like that, like because we don't like that you can just set it up to just have unmanned attacks. Um, so yes, I think that these are good. One long overdue, and one prescient. It shouldn't be prescient, but it is.
Exactly. He deserves credit because he did it.
Yeah.
And nobody else is really bothered. As you mentioned, it was the mid 1400s, 1452, when a previous pope, I believe by the same name, had okayed Portugal's actions in the slave trade, and that sort of helped kick it off. And you mentioned Columbus. Columbus, of course, famously not only taking on slavery, but also mass genocide and wiping out entire groups of people, entire nations of people. And so hopefully that is covered by this as well. But clearly, this is war. The issues of war are clearly an issue that this pope is taking seriously and putting forward in his speeches, in his actions, in his in this paper. So that's all to the good. And there's an actual American leader we can actually support and be proud of, whether you are of his religious flavor or not. Okay, anything else about the Pope before we move on?
No.
Are the hat shoes still by Prada?
I
Does
don't
anybody
know.
know? I don't-
Somehow I've let that slip past me, Matt. I apologize. I don't know what I was thinking.
I
If you
haven't.
feel so inclined to learn about this history, the one law was called the Pontifex Romanus, which I just happen to know off the top of my head, and I knew the other one, but it's gone with me right now. But look it up.
It's
It's
not
not
prima
great.
nocta.
It's not.
Okay.
No, because the Pope doesn't have sex.
I mean, you could hook a brother up. I mean,
That's true.
But,
what
and
good is power?
to be honest, some of the previous popes not so restrained.
That's true. In theory.
Yeah. So looking into the history of it is really actually quite fascinating because there's so many juxtapositions, and particularly the last couple of popes and this one specifically as well. Okay, well, we will catch up with the Pope on another occasion. Kudos to the Pope, and we will move on to our first segment, which will be Election Central. A couple of things have happened this past, 2 weeks, week and a half or so. Louisiana held a primary election, and actually, for the of the races that happened, one that I'm going to particularly mention is the race to fill the open U.S. Senate seat in Louisiana. Kind of interesting in that neither of the parties actually picked a nominee. In Louisiana, they have that system where you have to have a candidate has to have over 50% of the vote in order to outright gain the nomination. Neither party had that. They were both in the upper 40s. Both Republicans had an upper 40 candidate, and the Democrats had a candidate got up in the upper 40s. So that means there'll have to be runoffs for both parties to choose who will be each party's nominee for the Senate race in November. So, Louisianans, we'll see you back at the polls on June 27th. Kentucky. Well, actually, is there anything, anyone have anything on Louisiana before we move on to Kentucky?
Nope.
Nope.
Okay. Louisiana, I believe, had a race that was actually canceled due to some of the redistricting shenanigans of the Republicans. And speaking of Republican shenanigans, let's move on to Kentucky. MAGA's big day in Kentucky. Their primary had a number of MAGA endorsed candidates who won, and pretty handily. In the 4th congressional seat, which was held by Libertarian Thomas Massie, that's changed hands in the primary to a Republican nominee, and that's because he was really wiped out. He was so Massey was targeted by MAGA, and it seems to have been quite effective in his case. Although Massey has been a leader in the release of the Epstein files and making that information public, or possibly making it public, getting the law passed and following in pursuit of why it's not being acted on by the executive wing, the executive branch of government. And in this loss, he has also, since the primary, made a number of public statements where he's just starting to name the people who are in the Epstein files. So all of that waiting for the Epstein list, the unredacted Epstein list, is taking is taking a hit, so to speak, because Thomas Massey is not going quietly. He is mentioning all these names, and perhaps the libertarians will have a different view of MAGA and the Republicans after this, having one of their elected officials wiped out by MAGA. We'll see how they respond. And also, Kentucky famously had Senator Mitch McConnell, who is perhaps best known on working the Supreme Court justices and undermining Democratic nominees to be justices and enforcing conservatives onto the court to the detriment of the nation, some would say, uh, me being one of them. However, in this race, he is somewhat of a pariah because he's not MAGA. And the Republican who is running, Andy Barr, the media down there has said that he worked very hard to not mention McConnell, not be seen with McConnell, even though it's McConnell's seat he's running for. In any case, both parties had a half dozen or more candidates on the ballot. Andy Barr won the Republican nomination, and Democrat Charles Booker won the Democratic nomination, which means the next senator from Kentucky will be Andy Barr. Anything on Kentucky, folks?
You first.
I was just going to say it's ironic that the people we talked about were Epstein and Barr. Just put it out there.
Yeah, nice.
I'm of slightly mixed emotions about Thomas Massey. All of a sudden, he's grown a conscience or a spine or something at this late date. Good for him. Better late than never, but holy cats, are we pretty close to never as far as when it's going to matter. I'm glad he did something of the right thing and sticking to one scruple, and that is apparently the Epstein list when so many other people are prepared to forget it. But other than that, he helped Trump get to the big show. He is part of the Congress, the Republican Congress, who have given away all their power to one Donald Trump. And and he's as complicit as anybody else. He's one of the people that thought the leopards wouldn't eat his face. Guess what? They're going to eat your face. They'll get around to you eventually. There's no upside. And he helped the guy to the big show, and I don't feel bad for him at all. I'm sure he won't miss a meal, but I don't feel bad for him at all that he's out of the big insider trading club that we fund in this country for our servants. We'll be sorry to see him go and hand his insider trading ticket off to somebody else. Poor guy. If you don't want to give away all your power as a congressman, don't give away all your power as a congressman, stupid. This is what happens. Now you don't have any power, stupid. God damn it. Tell the others, you fucking idiot. It's so dumb. And they gave it away themselves. Now he puts whoever he wants in the seat. He should be beholden to his people, his electorate, the people who vote or don't vote for him. But nope. Now you're at the whim of the Mad King. So good luck. See you at the mailbox, dummy.
Yeah, it is remarkable that somebody who has helped him so much, somebody who's helped Trump so much, has wound up being targeted by him. But you're absolutely right. That's what he does every time. That's what Trump is known for. He's known for turning on his allies as much as he'll turn on anybody else. And they love it when he's attacking somebody else. But then all of a sudden they turn around and Jeff Flake out in Arizona, out. This guy in Kentucky, out. And dozens of others. Anybody who gave the slightest doubt or the slightest disagreement, you're out. You're done. Get the hell out of here, and Trump will scare you right. Will attack you till you go. And people in Kentucky. I mean, look, this is the voters that did this. It may be that the MAGA gave the endorsement and blah blah blah, but this is Kentucky. This is Kentucky citizens. This is what they are. This is who they are. And they put Andy Barr in as the Republican nominee for the Senate. with
Yeah,
the
you're right.
odds-on favorite to win, and they ran Massey out of office. And Libertarian, out you go, baby.
He
know,
ran
And
him
you're
out of
absolutely right.
office because he wouldn't co-sign pedophilia.
right.
This
Right.
administration will not allow you to hang on to any single dusty, lost and found in the couch cushions principle or moral or any. There's no line they won't make you cross. You'd think they'd draw. You'd be something you could hold on to. Pedophilia. That's as pretty much as low as it gets. I don't know. You'd have to really think hard to get any worse than that. And yet they won't let you stay anti-pedophilia. They will throw you out on your ass. This is not a good group of people.
Well,
Um,
we're seeing it.
I
Please,
do want
Henry.
to. I do want to say about Mitch McConnell. First of all, obviously he's done so much damage to our country. But I just want to mention, like, I can't help but watch how much he was able to do, in comparison to how little, oftentimes the Democrats are like, we have no power, we're not the people in power, whatever, whatever. And I mean, like, yeah, they don't own any branch of the government right now. But just like McConnell is the kind of guy who never gave up. And I just like wish that people who I agreed with would have the same level of tenacity that he did.
The little turtle that could.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess tenacity. Perhaps also there might be another name for it.
Making a vice
Because
into a virtue there somehow, but okay.
Right,
I'll
right.
take that too. I just feel like there's the and so much of it was turning virtues into vices, them being like, well, we don't want to be underhanded, we want to believe in the system, and then now they have no power.
Yeah, that Hitler boy, he really stuck to his guns. You got to give him credit. He had a crazy idea, but he saw it through. I don't know. That's some cockeyed praise right there for Mitch McConnell. I don't know if I can co-sign on that. But,
it's not so much about praise. It's much as just like, it's frustrating to me as a progressive to watch progressives say like, like we're falling into fascism, and then be like, well, there's nothing we can do about it. We don't even have power. And it's like McConnell would have never done. He would have been like,
that I will co-sign. I agree with you there.
He'd have been like, oh no, we'll find a way to fuck this up.
Well, right.
If we ever try anything at all, yeah, we'll find a way to screw it up for sure. Well said.
When he was the leader and they were in the minority, he used the legislative process to slow things down, which actually both parties do, but he was better at it. And he used it to throw in the wrench into the monkey works, or whatever that is, monkey wrench into the regular works. I don't know, whatever they call it.
First one better.
He was able to screw things up and to do it very effectively, and even block nominees back when he was, and then when he got back in power, use the process to prevent Democratic presidents from getting Supreme Court justices that they wanted, which is usually a given when a president says, goes through that process. A couple of things that are usually assured are the president's going to get who he wants in this cabinet. He has to ask for consent, but basically just asking for consent is saying, it's a courtesy. Please allow me to have my cabinet that I want. And then that same goes for nominees to certain higher offices. And McConnell was the one who said, no, fuck you. This is not happening. You're not getting what you want. It's only going to be what I want. And very, very underhandedly, and very, the Democrats certainly are not as effective at that. Certainly true. All right. Well, now the Republicans won't even talk about him. Now the Republicans in Kentucky are finding ways to avoid him, avoid being with him, avoid being seen with him, talking about him, mentioning his name. And that's paid off because Kentucky voters have, in this case, elected Andy Barr as their Republican nominee. And Charlie Booker has, the Democratic nominee, has quite a job ahead of him between now and
an uphill
November.
battle.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. And that brings us over to the next primary, which was the runoff primary down in Texas. There's a lot there, but what I will say is uh, we return to Texas. The establishment and bastard John Cronin was absolutely wiped out, almost 2-1 in the results, by affair leading to divorce MAGA and alleged lunatic Ken Paxton. And Ken Paxton will now represent the Family Value Party in the general election as the Republican nominee. Let's hope that the divorce settlement can settle in a little bit more before the November election, and he can represent the family values. We will see. There's the race is set then in Texas. The Republicans had to get through their nomination process, which they did. And that's Election Central. Moving on to our next issue. That's This Week in Failure. I guess technically we could have included the voters from Kentucky and Texas in this, but we are talking about our individuals. To start this off, Tulsi Gabbard, Republican agent or Russian agent, allegedly, and national intelligence leader, has either been thrown out by the White House and then allowed to cover by saying she quit, or she did quit due to her husband's health. Now, usually in Washington, when you get to the story of, I just want to spend time with my family, that's usually a clear signal that you have been run out, that somebody has come to you and said, you're going to announce that you are spending time with your family now, and you're going to do it, and it's not because that's your primary motive. It's because you've been told to say that.
Right, the rhetorical equivalent of your dog being sent to live upstate. Exactly. Means they took him out and shot him.
Yep. And so there, and that I mentioned the Russian agent thing allegedly, which is something that's not new. When she ran her presidential campaign, even before that, she as an elected official in Hawaii, there were some people were noting how at certain meetings and international meetings she would sit at the table with Putin, and is there something going on that we just don't know about? And then later on, during the presidential campaign, a lot of information came out that said, yeah, this is pretty much the case. She's working as an agent for the Russians, and she's not the only one, not even the only Republican candidate for president. And as we know, with their agent who's in the White House now, that's not something, once again, voters on the Republican side, perfectly fine with that. No problem. Anything on Tulsi Gabbard before we move on to our next week in failure candidate?
I feel bad for Putin. Where's he going to get all his information now? You're going to have to slip a bug into Marco Rubio's oversized shoes. They could bug the Oval Office, but Trump doesn't fucking know anything.
Well, so, right.
Yeah, poor Putin. Poor, it's just bad month for Putin. Feel bad.
There you go. He can always go to China and make himself look much better than Trump.
There you go.
Oh, wait, no, he's already done that. Got to be something else. Well, we'll see. And now, speaking of such bizarre twists and turns, Jared Polis, who's the Democrat in Colorado, governor in Colorado, there is a MAGA clerk of courts who had been actually sentenced for allowing MAGA folks to get into the ballots and into the election paperwork. She allowed them to come in and have a free hand looking at all these materials. And she was found guilty, sentenced, sent to jail. And Governor Polis has now decided to pardon her or release her from incarceration for parole. So I guess technically she's still guilty. She just doesn't have to finish her sentence that she was given. And
What's Latin
Democrats, I
for
think,
close enough?
huh?
I say, what's Latin for close enough?
Nice. Well, Hannah, aren't you from out there in Colorado?
I am from Colorado, and I think Polis was. I think he was a local representative, maybe in Boulder when I was in college. And he's been like a pretty good politician up until this point. I don't know what's happening here. Some people said that it's statesman. Some people said that it's, whatever. But it feels like such a bad. Um, Even like the optic, like apart from the obviousness of it, the optics of it are bad. And I'm pretty anti-incarceration in general. But I mean, like, this is somebody who helped Trump win the election. Trump pardoned her, but that doesn't mean anything because it's a state crime and he doesn't have control over that. And Colorado is pretty. It's a blue state, but it has a lot of red history. But the red tends to be pretty libertarian and pretty like anti-Trump. I mean, like if you remember, just a few months ago, before the last election, they voted to take him off the ballot, which then got, I think, stayed by the Supreme Court or something. So there's not a lot. I mean, there's MAGA faithful. It's where Bo Burt is from too, but there's a lot of MAGA skeptics even amongst the conservatives there. So I don't know what the move was here. And it's a little bit out of left field for me, honestly. I'm kind of surprised.
Yep. And mentioning Boebert by coincidence, there, Lauren Boebert from Congress. She's also one of those more libertarian-leaning members of the Republican caucus, and one that is being targeted now by MAGA. She's been very involved with the Epstein file release. She's seen the documentation unredacted, and that really drove her over the edge. And so, although she is very MAGA and very right wing and a very certainly extreme by anybody's measure, she's all on board with the Epstein files being released unredacted and there being a cost for having been involved in the pedophile ring that Trump and others were involved in. And so she is now on the short list of you were all for me and you helped me and you did all these things for me, and now I'm going to screw you.
Well, and
So
interestingly, her district was actually redrawn not that long ago in a way that would have made her definitely not voted in, but then she and others complained, and so they redrew it because Colorado, it has a lot of it's a square. So if you look at my camera, like the population is mostly in here, and then the outsides are farmland. And so she was over here, and now she's over here in Windsor, where my grandpa used to live. But it's like right next to where the rest of my family lives, which is definitely all going to vote blue. But they reconsidered her redistricting after outcry. Another thing that would not have happened the other direction.
Right. Well, that's true. And yeah, she jumped ship for a different congressional district when it was clear that she was going to get screwed on the redistricting. And so, look, she supported it. The Colorado voters support her. And as you say, it might be in only specific patches of Colorado, but the support is there and she's been able to get in. And all she's done is led to her own situation where she is now, where she's the target. As Tom said earlier, the leopard's going to eat your face too, and you just ignore it until it happens. Okay, that's where we are. Moving on, we're going to go on to our next issue, which is Oh Shoot, White House edition. You may have heard this. There is a situation where a gunman, said to be a lone gunman, had a revolver, went up to one of the gates of the White House property, sort of the corner of the property, and came up to the guard shack and started shooting at the guards. In turn, the two guards started to return fire, and I understand others came out, obviously, in support of them. But the two started shooting back at the shooter, and the end result was that the suspect was killed and that a bystander was wounded. Now, being a bystander, if this guy is at the corner of the property and shooting at the White House, then it's not unreasonable to believe that the bystander was not standing on the White House grounds, probably outside, probably on the street. So, how is it that this guy got wounded? Seems like somebody's fire uh, was, went wide or went somewhere else that it wasn't supposed to be. And so there was a guy who was wounded as well. The Secret Service at the time said they couldn't really comment on it. They didn't know what happened. There'll have to be an investigation, which is, once again, usually that sort of DC speak for, oh yeah, we shot him, not on purpose, perhaps. Perhaps it was part of the returning of fire and just happened. But the denial of any involvement and needing to be investigated usually is the first step to, yeah, we he was wounded because of our fire. We'll see what happens. They do, they should investigate it. They will tell us what they find, and probably about 2 or 3 weeks after the news cycle has played out, that this guy shot at the White House. Now, I heard that once he started firing, that a number of either Secret Service or other law enforcement ran into the press room and started telling the press to get on the floor and that they were in danger and they were perhaps a target in all this. Which, first of all, I don't know that that's possible from where the guy was at 17th and Constitution. He was on at the very far corner of the property.
Right. He's out at the guard shack.
Yeah. And the press is not on the edge of the building. They're in the building, right? So for him to have tried to target them seems a little bit of a stretch, but they are civilians, and law enforcement wants to show that it's protecting citizens, and so they ran to where the citizens were and told them that they needed to, and also a good follow-up on the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Whatever happened there, you want to keep the press focused on the fact that they are the targets and not that they are somehow at risk. I think, alleged. What are your thoughts?
It's getting harder to talk about shootings because obviously anybody wielding a gun near the White House is deeply concerning. But I just feel like shooting into the crowd on the National Mall or wherever, on Pennsylvania Avenue is also deeply concerning. And so like I feel like there is some part of me, and I don't know if this is correct or incorrect or otherwise, but there is some part of me that was like, did you overreact? Is there something you could have done? And like we know that, shootings by unnecessary use of force by law enforcement is a big thing in the United States. But like, why are you, unless there's somebody out on the lawn, everybody is, through a gate, inside a house, wherever, whatever, a pistol is not the way to go at this. And so I don't know. I just feel like there could have been some other way to resolve this that didn't involve people getting shot.
Well, I wonder, because this was not something that, this could have been, and we'll find out more once there's a further investigation, but this could have been suicide by cop. It could have been some sort of issue, other issue with the guy, because as you point out, when you walk up with a revolver, clearly you're trying to provoke something, and you're not going to win. That's certainly true against guys who probably have automatic weapons at the ready. So to do that, well, something's a little, um, you know, this. I think that maybe suicide by cop thing is more of a possibility here. This was not just somebody trying to complete a mission. This was someone who I pretty much, knew what was going to happen from the time he pulled out the revolver. Um, as soon as they saw it, I assumed that it was pretty much done. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tom.
I just want to throw in. I saw a note that CBS reported the suspect. The suspect was already known to the Secret Service. Source told the outlet that he had been arrested in July 2025 after he tried to access the White House and was subsequently sent to a psychiatric facility. So some relevant information there.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So this is, I don't think this is the sort of, once you pull out the revolver in front of law enforcement, you're pretty much done. Right? I mean, they're not trained to try to capture you. They're trained to return fire and empty their clips. I mean, that's their training. So if you're going to try to start something with them, probably not the best idea.
Sure.
Okay. Well, that's any update on any of the other shootings? Not today. We'll come back to this, but that's the latest, and I'm sure it will become the most recent cause for statements about how badly the ballroom is needed.
You need that ballroom, Matt.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Double the size. And so we'll see where they go with this. Then we're going to move on to our next segment. And in this case, that is international news. And there's a couple of things to mention here. First is the war stuff. There was a statement at the end of last week, I believe, that the White House had said they're not gonna do anything on Monday. Don't worry about it. We're not doing anything on Monday. And of course they did. They set up a full air attack, and then continued on, I believe, every day so far this week, and certainly this today, they did more. And at the same time, there's all of this discussion that they are close to a deal on reopening the Straits of Hormuz. I'm not certain exactly who they're talking to. I'm not certain exactly what the agreement is, but every once in a while this is floated. I mean, it's put out there. Somebody's stocks go up and down, and there's a lot to be related to it. And then we'll see in 2 or 3 weeks what actually happened. And so that's the latest with Iran. There is news out of France, making this an international news segment. France has called for closing down of immigration for 2 to 3 years, or at least one of the ministers has called for that. And we'll see how that plays out and what sort of effect that has on the global immigration issue. Canada, over in Canada, right up north of us, they've just announced that their big purchase of surveillance planes, they are going to go with a Swedish plane maker that they didn't even consider U.S. makers, and that they're sticking with European allies. And if that continues, then this is part of the economic fallout from having someone who is antagonistic instead of someone who is a consensus builder as President of the United States. And those middle powers, the set of nations that Canada has sort of started talking to and trying to promote interaction with, is moving full steam ahead. And one other story I'll mention and then open up the floor to everyone, and that is there's news out of the UK that the price of energy is going to be going up for British homeowners. It looks like the cost by July will be increasing by 13%. And they're saying in part it's due because of the closure of the Straits of Hormuz. And they're also saying look for another increase within the year. So by October, there'll be another increase. So how much can the British homeowner take? And will this result in more support for Farage and Reform over Starmer and Labour? Or will Starmer lose his place, his leadership position? There's a lot that could happen, and it's all in flux. All right, open floor. What do you think, folks? What do you think's going on in the world?
Well, I tell you, I had heard this out of France about the this guy shooting his mouth off to try to restrict immigration. I don't know him, and I don't know anything about it, but I am carefully. I am wary. I'm wary of the right wing movements in France and in Europe and in Russia and just everywhere these days, under every rock, bush, and tree, to move to the right and to condemn immigrants. And I don't like the way it looks in this country. And there's the only time I ever see it deployed is dishonestly and to the detriment of people who don't have it coming. And so my knee-jerk reaction, again, devoid of any journalism on this, I haven't read anything about it. I worry what they're trying to get at and how much is enough, because France gets a lot of immigrants for sure. They're over there just north of North Africa, and they get a lot of immigration, and I get it, and their culture is very important to them. On the other hand, maybe it's because we're a bigger country. I don't think we're getting swamped. We take in a lot of immigrants. I don't think our culture is suffering for it. I think it's probably improved by it in the overall. And sometimes I look at the people who think they're holding on to culture, and I don't like the way they, the culture they're holding on to. It's not great. It's not better than tacos, and so I worry about that. I don't. And it's my opinion that a lot of these right wing movements are funded and supported by people who aren't necessarily that country, that aren't the people of that country, and aren't interests and concerns of that country. So I feel like they come from without, and they come from unnatural places, things that aren't natural to the electoral system that countries have set up. So I'm pretty skeptical.
Yeah, I have similar feelings around France. I feel like they've been, they're a far right party, and this isn't Le Pen, but I feel like this person would be, friends with Le Pen. Has been just like they've gone through a series of electoral defeats, but I feel like each time they come, the sort of resilience against them gets a little bit worn down, and that like almost like exposure therapy or whatever, so like you have to really, when these kinds of things come up, you have to really push back hard against them, because otherwise it's just like, well, I have been hearing people say that, and it's like, yeah, but it's the same people saying it over and over and over again, and they're going to keep trying until they do it. And this whole idea of like a temporary shutdown for like 3 years, I don't know, 3 years just feels like a number that's like a significant period of time, but something they don't have to be locked into. Like it'll very easily become 10 years, 50 years, whatever. but it's definitely like the number just feels like a lie to me. Um, and any of those like ideas of like Tom alluded to it, just like in America when it's done for national security or cultural identity or whatever, they're always this like it's always just like whatever excuse they think. And they're just going to throw stuff at the wall until it sticks. And we just have to be aware that that's what they're continuing to do. This is no different from, you know, this sort of energy that's been pushed back by the French people over the last handful of elections and whatever, and just should continue to be so. Even looking this up, I don't know, where all this says, but one place described this, well, I don't know if this is a like legitimate source or something, but describe this person as like somewhat of a centrist, and like this is not a centrist opinion. It's a hard right opinion. And then as for Britain, um, I'm concerned about their energy costs, and the we've been noticing this now over the last couple of years, but it's just going to keep happening. Um, the British Isles are built to hold heat because they're used to rainy weather, cold weather, dreary. It's kind of like sort of famously what it's there for. And as they get hotter and hotter water coming up from the Gulf of Mexico because of global warming, they just don't have the infrastructure to deal with warmer weather. And the way you would do with that is air conditioning, which is not standard there. It's become more expensive, and it's just it's going to become. This is one of those things, kind of like for as long as we've been talking about the war in Iran, it's been one of those things where it's like, hey, just so you know, like when this happens, it's going to be like a big deal. Like when we first mentioned, like fertilizer or whatever, and we're like, it's going to affect crops, and then now groceries are getting like really expensive, and they're just going to get more so. So I feel like it's one of those things where it's our sort of natural. It's difficult for us as humans to understand the degree to which all these things are connected, but it's going to become like a rolling snowball, except with heat and stuff over there. As for I saw a tweet earlier this week by somebody who said that the Iran thing is all the compromises and completely done except for the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz and the nuclear like development. And it's like, that's the whole thing. You can't say it's all done except those two things. That is the entire issue. As for Canada getting surveillance planes from Sweden, apart from my feels about surveillance planes, I do think they should branch out. It's good.
Well, I will say something about to continue the conversation for a couple more minutes. France. Now, I don't know when the next election is scheduled, but I have a sneaking suspicion it's maybe 2 years. If he's talking about
Yeah.
something for 3 years, it's that kind of thing where is this just a trying to do something, but also make it delayed until after the next for the resolution to be after the next election. But that's something that's knowable. That's something I can look up, and I haven't yet. Um, However, as you point out, that's a very right wing position. So you can claim to be a centrist, but when you take positions like we're going to close the border for 3 years, that's not a central. I mean, as much as the Republicans keep the conservatives in this case, as long as conservatives keep pushing the center of political thought so far to the right that things like stopping all immigration for 3 years becomes a central position seems extreme to me. Um, what is also true is that, and you pointed out, Hannah, was that in the last election, the left, after the initial vote, which made the right look like they were gaining strength, the left sort of got their act together and started working together. A number of left parties joined together in order to work against it, and they were successful. They wound up gaining the majority in parliament. However, um, Macron has consistently named right wing prime ministers, even though he's dealing with a left based parliament. So this whole idea of being center is actually leading to some very strange policy, and this is just another show of that. As we all, I'm sure we all know, and I know Tom can probably vouch for, the left in France is not quiet. They tend to express themselves, and they tend to express themselves by going into the streets. They literally will do the sort of thing that we've not done here for a very long time, which is they get into the streets, they turn things over, they spray paint all over buildings, they do to represent blood, and I mean they take action and
They get in
serious.
the way. They get their boobs out. They shut down traffic. They shut down City Hall. They make a mess. They shut down metro lines and trains and things like that. Yeah, they don't go quietly into that good night. So passive, so ignorant, so asleep.
Yep. So let's see what
So
actually
they're
happens from this sort of push for the right again, and see if it's another time that Macron winds up getting served on served by the left for centrist right wing sort of policies. And let's hope that at some point that message gets through. That maybe he needs to look at where the left is coming from instead of constantly trying to outmaneuver them from the right. But we'll see. We'll see how the French respond, and if this is even a serious offer, or if this is just some ploy for the next election cycle. Excellent. Oh, and I will mention one more thing about the Brits as well. And Hannah, there's some things you mentioned. You're absolutely right on the larger picture and global warming and the fact that becoming, things are changing everywhere, and certainly for those on the islands over there. But I also think that this is an issue for the political world. And it's another thing where when Starmer came in, he didn't win because he was Keir Starmer. He won because they were not the Tories, they were not the Conservatives. And the Conservatives had run things so poorly and run the country into the ground for decades, for a decade and a half almost. And they had done so poorly and made things only internal and had caused such a ruckus from the right that even the British voters were like, "Yeah, this is not okay. We're gonna support Labour here." In the local elections that just happened a few weeks ago, what we saw was the both of the major parties took big losses. Both the Tories and Labour lost thousands of council seats on the local election level, and Reform and the Green Party gained. Uh, in a big way. Reform in a very big way. The Greens in a big way. But what it was showing, it seems, was that people are turning from the two major parties and looking anywhere else they can, because Starmer's whole argument from the beginning when he won was, "I'm not a flashy guy. I'm a competent guy. I'm not gonna. I don't want to do the fancy media stuff. I want to focus on running things well, being efficient, and being, thorough." And the problem is he hasn't shown that in his actions. He hasn't shown that in what he's actually accomplished, or in this case, not accomplished. And decisions are being made that are constantly putting the voters in a tighter and tighter box. Here's an increase in electricity. There was the whole thing about certain benefits that were cut back for winter heating when he first came in, which was, a big issue and seemed to be his placating the right. And now the costs are going up as well. So it's really putting a crunch on the more middle class and certainly the lower classes in Britain. And how are they going to respond? Well, we're going to have an election there sooner or later. And does this help bolster the position of somebody who has the Farage has an advantage in that he's never actually had to govern. So he can sit there and, like MAGA, talk about all the grandiose plans he has and how he's going to make things great again. He's going to make things Great Britain again. And it's almost meaningless because he has no authority and he's never had authority to show that he can do these things. But they're all right wing and people like that right now. And even Tony Blair came out today, a former Labor leader, and was saying that the problem is that the Labor is becoming too left, and this kind of you got to go to the right and to the center again. So all that is doing is it seems to me that all that's doing is encouraging people to go to the right even further, and so we'll see how that plays out. How this is handled is just another opportunity for Starmer to do things right, so that he can start to claim that he is effective and efficient and wants to be thorough and wants to be the the technocrat who gets things going. Um, but if he blows this, here we are again, and it's certainly not helping anybody on his side. Well, anything else on international before we move along?
No.
We will go to the next issue, which is Iced Out, and some updates on what's been going on with ICE. We now have a judge who's tossed out the charges against Kilmar Abrego Garcia. So there's some actual positive news. Someone who was taken captive, sent abroad to the big prison down in Central America, was brought back because the judge said bring him back, and then he was harassed and they've not stopped harassing him and arresting him and trying to send him to another place. And so the latest is, once again, that the judiciary is saying this is nonsense, you got to stop doing this. So we'll see the response to that and what happens there. And the other big iced out story is in New Jersey, where Governor Sherrill and a number of elected officials, not just her, but a team of elected officials, wanted to get access to a North Jersey immigration detention center, and which certainly is said to be Congress's role. A congressperson should not be turned away and should be allowed to inspect the facility anytime they want. All they have to do is show up. But ICE has been very resistant, always turning them away. And here's another case where they not only did it to some Congress folks, but to the governor of New Jersey as well. At this particular detention center, there's a hunger strike, and it's already entered into its fourth or fifth day. So even more important for elected officials to get access to find out what's actually happening and what's going on. What do you think about ICE?
Nothing good. No, I mean, I think that when it comes to Kelmar Abrego Garcia, I don't know what it is, what their vendetta is, right? They arrested him unnecessarily, and now they've decided they must make an example of him to save face. And it's so like, I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to continue to be exasperated by them, but this would be one of the reasons to be. It seems like they're too embarrassed to admit that they could have made a mistake, so they're going to just hound this guy until they come up with some problem. The same way that like they used to hire CIA people to just follow people around until they did something. and then to prevent a governor from being able to be in a detention center in normal times is a problem, especially during a hunger strike. It's all the more of a problem.
Tom, anything to say about ICE?
I'm glad Kilmaro Abrego Garcia is finding his way out of this pit that the U.S. government has put him in. I don't know what else to say.
Fair enough. In that case, it's time to go to our traditional ending, and that would start with the Epstein update, or count up. And this week we've got 3,998 days since the unredacted Epstein list has not been released. And it doesn't look like it's happening anytime soon, although, as we noted earlier, Tom Massey is publicly mentioning names of people in the documents. So
Massey, you got 2 days. Just do it. Do it tomorrow.
Do it tomorrow. Exactly. Do it 1,500 days ago. But yeah, exactly. And it's nice that he's doing that. But as you've pointed out, Hannah, it's certainly not what is required by law and has been, and also is the right thing to have done thousands of days ago. Thanks for joining us at PolitiPod Live for Political Talk. You're welcome to join us every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, right here for PolitiPod Live. If you want political laughs, you can join us and a half dozen of our friends for our monthly political comedy podcast, PolitiPod. You'll find it at soundcloud.com/PolitiPod.
I'm Tom Bickle.
I'm Hannah Soldner.
And I'm Matt Nisanoff saying goodbye.